My father's funeral was on a Tuesday. 200 people came. My stepmother, Patricia, sobbed dramatically in the front row, clutching my half-brother Daniel's hand. She'd only known my father for 8 years. I'd known him for 35. I sat in the back, watching her performance, remembering the phone call from his lawyer 3 days earlier. "Ms. Catherine, your father left something for you. Don't tell anyone, especially not your stepmother." That's when I knew. My father had been playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. My name is Catherine Marie Harrison. I'm 35 years old, and I'm a senior designer at an architecture firm in Boston. I have a good life, a beautiful apartment, and a career I built for myself. But the last 8 years of my life have been spent watching a woman slowly pull my father away from me. Patricia Ann Miller married my father 8 years ago, 3 years after my mother died. She was 38 at the time, 20 years younger, blonde, attractive, and incredibly calculating. When I first met her, I tried to be welcoming. My father was so lonely after my mother died of breast cancer. If Patricia made him happy, I would be happy. The first 6 months were good. Patricia was polite, attentive. She invited me to family dinners. My father smiled. Then they got married, and everything changed. The first sign came 3 months after the wedding. I'd met my father for coffee, like we did every Sunday morning. Patricia showed up. "Robert, you couldn't have forgotten we're going to the furniture store today," she said, her voice sweet but firm. "Patricia, I'm with Catherine." "I know, darling, but we have an appointment. Catherine will understand, won't you, Catherine?" She looked at me, challenge in her eyes. "Of course," I said. What else could I say? My father apologized. "We'll make up for it next week." But next week never came. Patricia always had an excuse: a doctor's appointment, a home renovation meeting, her brother visiting. Within 6 months, my weekly meetings with my father became once a month, then once every 2 months. A year later, we barely saw each other at all. Patricia was always in the way. But the real change started when Daniel came into the picture. Patricia had a son from a previous relationship who was 12 when she married my father. My father adopted him. Daniel was a special case. A kid who squandered a full college scholarship, used my father's credit card without permission, and couldn't keep a job for more than 3 months. But in Patricia's eyes, Daniel was perfect. Every failure was a learning experience. Every theft was a misunderstanding. And my father, to keep Patricia happy, ignored everything. 5 years ago, I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving dinner. Patricia said it was just immediate family, Daniel and her. I wasn't immediate family. 4 years ago, my father celebrated his 70th birthday, a huge party. I only found out through a text message afterward. "It was wonderful. Wish you could have been there." 3 years ago, I visited my father in the hospital once after a minor surgery. Patricia stopped me in the corridor. "Catherine, you're exhausting your father. Maybe you could reduce your visits." "He's my father. And he's my husband, and his health is my responsibility. He doesn't need stress." Stress. Was I stress? But the worst part was learning 2 years ago that my father had changed his will. I found out by accident. An old family friend, lawyer Harold Green, called me to his office one day. "Catherine, this may not be right, but I wanted you to know. Your father updated his will last month. He's leaving everything to Patricia." My heart stopped. Everything? The house, savings, investments, life insurance, everything. He's leaving you a small keepsake. your mother's jewelry box, but financially, nothing. Why are you telling me this? Harold looked uncomfortable. Because your father did this under Patricia's pressure. I sat there. She dictated every word. I asked, Robert, are you sure? Does Catherine know? He told me, Patricia and I discussed it. This is for the best. But his eyes were unhappy. I cried that night. Not just about the money. I didn't even care about the money. I cried because my father had completely erased me from his life. 35 years of father-daughter relationship, obliterated with a signature. But I didn't call my father. I didn't confront him. Because what could I say? Why aren't you leaving me anything? Would I look like a greedy daughter wanting his money? Instead, I quietly withdrew. If they didn't want me, I wouldn't force it. 6 months later, my father got diagnosed. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Untreatable. Maybe a year to live. Patricia called me. Catherine, your father got the news. He's at the hospital tomorrow. You should come see him. I went. My father was pale, thin, but he smiled when he saw me. Catherine, he said, reaching out his hand. I held his hand. Patricia was on the other side of the room, looking at her phone, half interested. I missed you, Dad. I missed you too, sweetheart. His voice was broken. I'm sorry for everything. Dad, we don't need to talk about that now. No, listen. He squeezed my hand. I'm sorry for losing you. With Patricia, I was trying to make things easier. But you were never something that should have been made easier. Patricia turned to us. Robert, the doctor is waiting. Catherine, maybe another time. And she pushed me out. After that day, my chances of seeing my father in the hospital were very limited. Patricia set visiting hours when I was working. Weekends were family-only days. Eventually, they moved my father to hospice. Final days at home. I watched from afar, through social media. Patricia posted updates every day, spending precious time with Robert, together with family. Photos with Daniel, with Patricia. I was never in the photos. 3 days ago, at 11 p.m., a number called. A number I didn't recognize. Ms. Harrison? This is Edward Castellano. I'm Robert Harrison's attorney. Edward Castellano, not Harold Green, a different lawyer. Attorney? Isn't Harold Green my father's attorney? Mr. Green was the former attorney. Mr. Harrison contacted me last week about a very important matter. My heart raced. What matter? The will. He prepared a new will, and I need to meet with you, urgently. But this meeting must be completely confidential. You must not tell anyone, especially not Patricia Harrison. The next day, I went to Edward Castellano's office, downtown Boston, in a prestigious building. Edward was in his 60s, serious-looking, with thick glasses. Ms. Harrison, your father called me last week. He was in hospice, very weak, but his mind seemed sharp. He asked me to urgently prepare a new will. He pulled out a document folder. This will was not disclosed to Patricia Harrison. Mr. Harrison said that Patricia was aware of the old will and believed it would not be changed. So what's in the new will? Edward turned the document and showed me. As I read, my eyes filled with tears. The house? Mine. Investment accounts? Mine. Life insurance? Mine. Shares in Dad's company? Mine. Everything. Everything to me. To Patricia? To Patricia Ann Harrison, I leave the gifts and personal belongings she received during our marriage, nothing else. To Daniel? To Daniel Miller, I leave his education fund. This fund has already been spent. Is this real? Completely real. Signed by 2 witnesses, notarized, completely legal. And Mr. Harrison's last will. Patricia doesn't know? No, and your father wanted it to stay that way. He wanted it revealed after the funeral. A surprise, you might say. Why? Why did he do this? Edward took off his glasses and cleaned them. Miss Harrison, your father was very candid with me. He said, Patricia deceived me for 8 years. She thinks she's getting everything. She's planning to spend my money. But I was listening. I heard the phone conversations, her plans with friends. She'll sell my house, buy Daniel a car, they'll move to Europe. She's counting me as dead before I'm even gone. I couldn't breathe. And he added, Catherine forgave me. Despite everything, she forgave me. I thought I'd lost her. But last week she came to visit, midnight, while Patricia was sleeping. She just held my hand and said, I love you, Dad. She didn't ask for anything else, nothing. And that's when I realized she's my real daughter, not Patricia. My tears fell. 2 days before my father died, I'd gone to the hospital at midnight, without Patricia knowing. The nurse let me in, just a few minutes. My father was sleeping, but I held his hand. I love you, Dad, I whispered. He hadn't opened his eyes, but he'd squeezed my hand. He knew about that moment. Now, we're at the funeral. Patricia is still in the front row, crying dramatically. After the funeral service, everyone gathered at the house. Patricia acted like the hostess, served food, thanked guests. At one point, she approached me. Catherine, you know your father loved you, but life was complicated. I hope you understand. I smiled. I understand, Patricia. Tomorrow they'll read the will. I'm afraid there's not much for you. Everything was joint property while your father and I were married, you understand? I understand. But your mother's jewelry box is yours. I know you have beautiful memories with it. I kept smiling. How thoughtful, Patricia. Thank you. Patricia seemed satisfied and returned to chatting with other guests. Daniel approached me. Aunt Catherine, Dad didn't leave you much money, did he? He wasn't your father, Daniel. Whatever, you know. Mom's selling the house. We're finally moving to Miami. Is that so? Yeah, Mom already found a realtor. It'll be listed next month. I laughed internally. Interesting. I hope the plans work out. The next day, 10 a.m., we gathered at Edward Castellano's office. Patricia, Daniel, me, and a few distant relatives. Harold Green was there, with the old will file. Edward Castellano was also there, but nobody knew who he was. Harold Green began. We're gathered here today to read Robert Harrison's last will. Patricia sat up straight, ready. Harold read the old will. I leave all my assets to my beloved wife, Patricia Ann Harrison. Patricia smiled. To my daughter, Catherine Marie Harrison, I leave my mother's jewelry box. Everyone waited. Was that it? Patricia relaxed. Harold, thank you. I think everything's clear. Edward Castellano stood up. Actually, it's not finished. The room fell silent. I'm Edward Castellano, from a separate law firm. Mr. Robert Harrison contacted me 1 week before his death and prepared a new will. This will, being more recent, supersedes the previous will. Patricia's face went white. What? No, that's not possible. Robert would have talked to me. Miss Harrison, please sit down. I will read the new will. Patricia sat, her hands trembling. Edward opened the document and began reading. I, Robert James Harrison, being of sound mind, declare my last will as follows. First, I leave my home, the property at 247 Beacon Street, Boston, to my daughter Catherine Marie Harrison. Second, I leave all my investment accounts, bank accounts, and stocks to my daughter Catherine Marie Harrison. Third, I leave my $500,000 life insurance policy to my daughter Catherine Marie Harrison. Fourth, to my wife Patricia Ann Harrison, I leave the personal gifts she received during our marriage and her own personal belongings. She may not claim any other property of mine. Fifth, to my stepson Daniel Miller, I leave the education fund previously allocated to him. This fund has already been spent, therefore no other material assets remain. Silence. Patricia's mouth fell open. Daniel leaned forward. Wait, what? Nothing for us? Edward continued. Mr. Harrison also included an explanatory letter. Patricia, you deceived me for 8 years. You took my daughter from me. You planned my money before my death. I heard everything, every phone conversation, every plan, and I decided you deserved nothing. Catherine, I thought I'd lost you, but you forgave. Despite everything, you loved me. That's why everything is yours. Love the house, live there, and be happy. I love you so much, daughter. I always have. My eyes filled with tears. My hand covered my mouth. Patricia slammed the table. No, no, this can't be legal. Robert couldn't have written this. When he was sick, his mind wasn't right. Edward remained calm. Ms. Harrison, Mr. Harrison has a medical evaluation confirming full capacity when he signed the will. It was confirmed by 2 doctors. 2 independent witnesses verified the signature. This will is completely valid and legally binding. I'll go to court. I'll contest it. That's your right, but your chances of overturning the will provisions are extremely low. Mr. Harrison was very careful. Patricia turned to me, her eyes blazing with anger. You did this. You manipulated him. He was vulnerable when he was sick. Patricia, I said calmly, I never once called my father to change his will. I never once asked for money. I just loved him. Nonsense, Patricia, Edward's voice was firm. If you continue harassing Ms. Harrison, I'll call security. Daniel put his head in his hands. Mom, what are we going to do? We have no house, no money. Shut up, Daniel. Patricia's face was bright red. Edward turned to me. Ms. Harrison, the house deed documents are here. The keys are among your father's personal effects. Tomorrow, the property will officially transfer to your name. Patricia jumped up. I'll be homeless? On the street? Ms. Harrison, I said, my father specified in the will. You can take your personal belongings, but the house is mine, and I want you moved out by this weekend. 1 week? Impossible. Not impossible, just a matter of motivation. Patricia grabbed her purse. I'm going to my lawyer. I'll see you in court, Catherine. I'll ruin your life. And she stormed out. Daniel ran after her. The room fell silent. Edward turned to me. Congratulations, Ms. Harrison. The will is entirely yours. I sat down, still in shock. I never thought he'd actually do this. Your father knew. He trusted you. My tears fell, but this time they were tears of happiness. That night, I went home, to my father's house, now my house. Patricia's things were still everywhere, but I gathered them and packed them in boxes. I went to my father's study. On his desk, there was a note, for me. Catherine, if you're reading this, my plan worked. I'm sorry, so sorry. I let myself lose you. Patricia deceived me, but I let myself be deceived. We lost 8 years. But I hope, with this final gift, I can make you happy again. Love the house, build a family there, and forgive me. I love you forever, Dad. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried. In the following weeks, Patricia actually went to court. She contested, claimed mental incapacity, claimed manipulation. But Edward was right. My father's will was ironclad. Doctor reports, witness statements, video recordings, everything showed my father was fully competent and acting of his own free will. 6 months later, the court decision came. The will was upheld. Patricia's contest was denied. Patricia and Daniel moved to another city. I never spoke to them again. I renovated the house. I turned my father's study into an art studio. I planted new flowers in the garden. I filled the house with love. A year later, I met Marcus, a gentle, understanding man. I told him everything, and he understood. 2 years later, we got married. In my father's house, in the garden, in a small ceremony. It's been 3 years now since my father died, and I still talk to him. Every night, I look at my father's photo. Thank you, Dad. You never left me. Because I understood. Dad had never left me. He was just waiting to play his final card, and his final move was checkmate. Patricia still sends messages occasionally. Catherine, please reconsider. Even a small amount would help. I delete them, without reading. Because my father left me a legacy. But it wasn't just money. He left me justice. He left me respect. And most importantly, he left me unconditional love. Patricia chose between Daniel and the 35-year bond with me, and I won. Finally, my father saw me, really saw me, and that was enough. I love the house. I love Marcus. I love my life. And I love my father every day for everything. Some battles are won silently. Some revenge is served cold. And sometimes the greatest victory is simply to survive and be happy. I'm not Emma Harper. I'm Catherine Marie Harrison. I'm 38 years old, and I'm finally home, my real home.